Here with his thoughts on the North Korea threat, Republican Congressman from Florida, Ron DeSantis. Congressman, good to see you.
Good to see you.
What do you recommend we do?
Well, I think the president's right to say this policy for the last 20 years has failed. Strategic patience, which is what the Obama called their policy, was basically an appeasement strategy. And Susan Rice recently took to the New York Times opinion pages to say we can live with a nuclear Kim Jong-un. And that was really their policy the whole time. I think that was irresponsible. So I think the president's right to take this head on. It is a very difficult problem.
How do we live? Yeah, I want to get back to that. And if people aren't familiar with it, they should check it out in the New York Times. Susan Rice indeed said that we can basically live with a nuclear North Korea and do so just as we lived with a nuclear Soviet Union. My point only would be, and I think you agree with this, is why should we settle for that when this is something that can be fixed, should be fixed, albeit, you know, it's not pretty right now?
Well, Ann, the Soviet Union mutually assured destruction was really what kept the Cold War in check. The Soviets knew if they attacked us, we would attack them back, and it really wasn't worth it. Now, Kim Jong-un, look, this is a young, plump, immature kid, and he's only there because of he's only there because of accident of birth. His family has run the country like a prison for decades, and so yes, if he rationally apprised everything, he would say he wouldn't want to attack the United States because then that would be the end of his regime, as Secretary Mattis and the president have said. But I just don't know that we want to assume that he sees all this the way that you or I would see it, and so he may not be approaching this in the same way that a rational actor would. And so basically, if you're saying live with Kim Jong-un having nuclear weapons, you're basically saying that this is a rational guy, and I don't think we have enough information about this guy to say he's rational.
You run the risk, Congressman, of being held hostage by the likes of Kim Jong-un. Going forward, I mean, any future issue, if he's not stable and he has nuclear power and can point those things right at us and take one of our cities out, then he has a lot of leverage. Why are we going to allow anybody like that to get any kind of leverage at all?
Well, that's not good for America's national security. You're right. And understand, whatever happens with North Korea, if he's allowed to continue on this path, then you got to look at other countries like Iran, which the Iran deal is basically the North Korea deal of 2013, 2014. I mean, that is the same thing. We're going to be in the same position with Iran next decade.
President Clinton somehow thought, right, that you could deal with North Korea and that you could, get them to dismantle their program if you just were nice and all were getting along. And it's the same thing with Iran. Yet you add in Iran the religious component to this, and it makes it all the more scary. Congressman, this sort of appease mentality we have learned throughout history, it doesn't work.
Well, you're right, and you're exactly right to point out about Iran. We may or may not be able to deter Kim Jong-un using conventional deterrence. Iran, given that mutually assured destruction, may be an inducement for them, not a deterrent, given their apocalyptic religious viewpoints. They having these nuclear weapons, I think, would represent an even more significant threat.
What would you recommend we do?
Well, I think we should support the president, support Secretary Mattis, support the diplomatic efforts that are undertaken, let them know that the Congress has their back, and we're speaking with one voice on this. Yeah. Look, I would love for China...
Right? This is what bothers me, because so many members of the left now are out pointing fingers, and they're saying that our president is being bombastic or irresponsible or is just a crazy man himself for saying some of the things that he has said. I would point out that these are things that need to be said. These are also things that are somewhat obvious, right? We are the biggest military might in the world, but it is important that this man, Kim Jong-un, remember that. In terms of the lack of unification as a country, how much of a problem is that going to be as we try and deal with North Korea?
Well, it's a problem, especially because the last 20 years have been irresponsible. I mean, and you did have rhetoric that's flown around in the past, but the bottom line is the policy had failed. And so I think it would be irresponsible to continue doing what the previous administrations have done. So this president is trying, the administration's trying to come with a policy that can actually work. And so let's give them a chance to succeed.
Congressman DeSantis, thank you so much.
Thank you.